The first love of my boyfriend was a doctor. She used her position to lock me in the MRI machine all night. I was furious and demanded an explanation, but my boyfriend just asked me if I had had enough of causing a scene. Later, I found out that what was a nightmare for me was a joyous night for them together. Chapter 1. Dancing twisted my waist. When the lights went out at night, Michael's large hand reached for me, and I groaned in pain. The sound made him stiffen all over, and then he began to lower his head to kiss me. I pleaded with a sob, and only then did he realize that I wasn't trying to set a mood but that my waist was really hurting. He cursed under his breath and went into the bathroom in a bad mood. When he came out, he grimly scheduled me for an MRI the next day. I told him not to make a big deal out of it. I've twisted it before and resting for a week would be fine. He got into bed, carefully embraced me from behind, greedily buried his face in the crook of my neck. A week? I don't want to endure even a day. His voice muffled as he covered my afflicted area with his palm, gently massaging it. I couldn't help but smile. For 3 years, he had cared for me like a treasure. Being too happy, I never imagined losing it would come so quickly. Chapter 2. On the second day of the MRI, there were many people waiting in line, and I was the last one in the afternoon. Michael, for the first time ever, skipped a meeting to accompany me. He knew I was afraid of the confined space of the MRI machine. When my waist was secured, I began to count silently with my eyes closed. Michael said when I reached 521, I could go out to see him. I counted from 521 to 1314, but heard the sound of the doctor opening the door and leaving. I called out in a panic, but no one responded. The muffled echo filled me with fear. As the last patient, I might have been forgotten inside the machine. It was eerily quiet all around, and the heavy door of the MRI room completely blocked out any outside sounds. As time passed, I broke out in a cold sweat. The doctor didn't return. I calmed down, hoping Michael would notice soon. When hiking, if I fell behind, he would quickly and accurately find me. When I played stubbornly and left, he always waited at the door, saying he'd wait for me to come home. So this time, he would surely go find a nurse to remind me quickly. However, as the sun went down and the last ray of light disappeared indoors, I fell into complete despair. From 5 in the afternoon to 7:30 the next morning. Every second was torment. The coffin-like enclosed space was suffocating, and the urge to urinate uncontrollably was maddening. When I was discovered in the morning, the person exclaimed, "Oh my, how come there's a person here, and they wet their pants?" In front of everyone, the most embarrassing scene in over 20 years unfolded. I was helped out of the machine, my lower back numb, causing me to kneel on the ground on the spot. Trembling, I reached for my phone, only to see a message from Michael last night. He mentioned there was something urgent at work, so he had to leave first. When he realized I hadn't returned all night and rushed back, the hospital leadership had already bought me fresh clothes and was about to send me off with some money. Michael looked at me, unable to hide his guilt and heartache. He strode over and grabbed the collar of the hospital leader. He demanded that they bring the doctor in question and make them kneel down to apologize to his wife. Behind him stood a bodyguard and a lawyer. The lawyer was someone only hired for important lawsuits with a hefty fee. The grandeur of this setup made me naively believe that no matter how influential the doctor was, Michael wouldn't let them off the hook. I was wrong. When the hospital leadership, under pressure, brought the young female doctor in front of us, Michael froze in place. The anger he displayed a moment ago, ready to strike, was suddenly halted. In that moment, even his grip on my hand began to loosen. I looked at the young female doctor. Her beautiful face was full of sadness, tears streaming down as she gazed at Michael. Trembling, she spoke. "Are you going to hit me?" A hint of panic flashed in Michael's eyes, and he subconsciously lowered his hand. "How? Could it be you?" he said. Tears from the female doctor fell on her clothes in rapid succession. "It's me, I neglected my duties, causing your loved one to suffer. I deserve to be punished, I'm not a competent doctor. I should bear all the consequences, but..." She looked even more sorrowful at Michael. But I was also anxious to see my loved one last night. I haven't seen him in 3 years, I miss him so much. Just the thought of seeing him made me forget everything. The female doctor couldn't hold back her sobs. Michael, like a deflated balloon, quietly averted his gaze. Suddenly, my heart grew cold. In 3 years, I had never seen Michael compromise with anyone. The last time a dance instructor made advances towards me, he beat them to a pulp. He would rather throw away a large sum of money than let the other person off easily. This time, the female doctor approached him slowly, even reaching out to tug on his sleeve. She said, "Hit me, I can't control my heart, I truly deserve it, hit me. Hit me." And Michael seemed to lose his ability to resist, allowing the other party to pull and tug. This medical accident absurdly turned into a deeply moving reunion. The female lead boldly asked for a beating, while the male lead's face showed reluctance but remained silent. If it weren't for me, the person who just wet their pants, perhaps they would have embraced each other by now. For 3 years, I knew Michael had no shortage of exes, but I had never doubted him. But now, even if I were a fool, I should realize. The loved one the female doctor urgently went to see was Michael. The hospital leadership timely stepped forward to resolve the issue. He said since everyone knew each other, it was just a misunderstanding. He said the MRI cost would be refunded, plus an additional 2,000 yuan for mental distress. After saying this, he tried to please Michael by patting his arm. Michael remained silent. The hospital leader laughed and suggested everyone disperse. As people whispered and walked away, I, as the person involved, was easily sent away with 2,000 yuan. Michael finally struggled to regain his composure and turned around. He said, "I'll explain to you when we get home." I chuckled coldly and looked at him coldly. Home. That unscrupulous doctor hasn't knelt down to apologize to me yet. Chapter 3. Behind Michael's shoulder, I saw Lena, the female doctor, with a provocative smirk on her lips. Michael's voice carried a sense of compromise. I said, "Go back first, we'll talk lat." "Shut up." I pushed Michael aside, stood in front of Lena. "As the person involved, I haven't forgiven you. Who gave you the right to act on your own? If you have something to apologize for, say it to the person involved. What's the meaning of tugging back and forth with someone else's boyfriend? Or were all your previous medical accidents resolved by seeking others' boyfriends' help?" The dispersed crowd gathered once again. Michael grabbed my arm, his voice tinged with anger. "Gwen, go back and talk." I coldly brushed him off. "You just said, for such a disaster, not even kneeling down to apologize is worth forgiving." Michael's expression grew even darker. "I actually think you have a point. Whether or not I forgive, she should kneel down and apologize first. What do you think, boyfriend?" The hospital leader seemed surprised that the pitiful person who wet their pants and collapsed on the ground inside the machine would suddenly make such a scene. Impatiently, he turned back with a forced smile. But seeing Michael's lack of momentum, his tone became less friendly. He said, "Apologies and compensation are all acceptable, but making someone kneel is a bit too much, isn't it? It's not to that extent, is it?" Lena lowered her head, appearing remorseful, but in reality, she covered her nose with her hand, arrogantly implying that I had a smell. This arrogant attitude made me suddenly realize I wasn't forgotten inside the machine. "Lena, it must have been intentional." Michael impatiently adjusted his tie, once again trying to take me away. In a deep voice, he said, "Go back, I will give you a satisfactory explanation." I suppressed the sadness in my heart, took out a black card from my bag. Passing by him, I handed it to the lawyer. "Double the price, interested in cooperating?" The lawyer named Thomas smirked, took my card from Michael's murderous gaze. The hospital leader became anxious. He finally realized that I might be as difficult to deceive as Michael. So, he finally turned the gun on Lena. "Doctors, it's better not to cause trouble for the hospital due to negligence. Otherwise, with a blemished professional record, no hospital will dare to accept you in the future." A blatant threat. Lena finally retracted her provocative gaze. She once again turned her gaze to Michael. That expression, as if she was the one who had suffered a great humiliation. "Fine, I'll kneel," she said. "I was wrong, I shouldn't have panicked when I saw him, I deserve it, I'll kneel." As if enduring humiliation, she gritted her teeth, closed her eyes, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Michael endured to the extreme, the veins on his arm bulging, and in the moment Lena bent her knees, he finally erupted. He grabbed Lena's arm and lifted her up. "Enough," he growled. My heart felt like it was being squeezed, a feeling of suffocation enveloped me. The first love melodrama finally reached the point where the male lead softened. As Lena cried tears of joy, Michael pushed her away with difficulty. "Fire her," he said through gritted teeth. The hospital leader hurriedly nodded to calm the situation. Michael turned around, his face now icy, looking at me. "Satisfied now?" His gaze froze my heart. The person who whispered sweet nothings to me last night seemed bewitched. I held back the tears in my eyes, defiantly challenging him with a taunting smile. "What if I'm not satisfied?" In a scene reminiscent of "a lover can be killed, but not humiliated, then I want to humiliate him in front of everyone?" Standing in front of Lena, watching her cover her nose and mouth once again, I smirked maliciously. "Does Dr. Lena find it unpleasant?" Lena took a half step back. "I agree with that too. So, as the main culprit, please personally wash the clothes you dirted on me, clean them, and return them to me. No need to compensate with new ones, after all, I'm quite sentimental, being cheap. Those dirty clothes are in the trash can in the bathroom, so please trouble yourself to pick them up by hand." After saying that, I looked towards the hospital leader. If Dr. Lena doesn't show sincere remorse, wouldn't that be considered a professional blemish? With Thomas's reputation backing me up, the hospital leader didn't want the situation to escalate. Lena finally showed me a resentful look. And Michael clenched his fist, but ultimately didn't say anything more. Chapter 4. I don't know how I managed to make it back to my single apartment. The moment I entered, all the strength in my body was drained. It's said that in life, we inevitably have to eat shit, but we don't have to chew it. But whether I chew it or not, it seems what I say doesn't count. My 3-year relationship with Michael, all the past happiness, made me unable to resist questioning the authenticity of everything that happened today. 3 years ago, Michael shielded me from a thug's bat with his shoulder. As blood flowed down his forehead, he asked me with a smile if he could get a kiss if he didn't die. I wiped away my tears and nodded at him, then watched him play with those thugs. When he subdued the last person, he wiped the blood from his mouth and smiled calmly at me. "Don't play dumb," he said. That kiss with the taste of blood was unforgettable. Over the past 3 years, he almost spoiled me to the skies, making me wonder if I saved his life in a past life. But it was precisely because of this that the betrayal hit me even harder. After soaking in a bath, I reluctantly composed myself before opening the door. I wanted to figure out the cause of this sudden death of our relationship. Sure enough, Michael was waiting outside. Surprisingly, he hadn't forgotten to give me the medical report. "It's just a muscle strain, rest for a few days and you'll be fine," he said, placing several ointments down and explaining how to use them. After that, he looked up at me, taking a long time before getting to the point. "If you want to slap me, wait until your waist is better." My eyes instantly stung. The betrayal without warning made it impossible to stay rational. I'd rather twist my waist again than not slap his pretentious face. But he beat me to it and held me back. He protected my waist, but his posture remained respectful. "I didn't spend last night alone with her," he began to explain. "He said he saw Lena in the corridor last night and worried I might see, so he changed locations. To avoid suspicion, he called many people. After dispersing, he went back to the company nearby. After speaking, Michael sent the company's surveillance footage to my phone and showed me the call records of the people he contacted. I believed him to some extent, but remained silent, just looking at him indifferently. He lowered his head in a cryptic manner. Look, he clearly knows what I care about. He clearly knows that I didn't really intend to make someone kneel, just confirming his attitude. Yet he couldn't help but help Lena up. After a moment of silence, Michael finally spoke with difficulty. He admitted that he loved her. He said she couldn't kneel, her leg was injured. Lena injured her leg while taking care of his father. As Michael said these words, his eyes were filled with bloodshot veins. He said he thought the bond between us was unbreakable, enough for me to compromise for him this time, but he overlooked my feelings. He said he went against his initial promise, to always prioritize my feelings above his. He shouldn't use my grievances to alleviate his guilt. He restrained his emotions and calmly reviewed the situation. My heart felt like it had been hollowed out. Yet he lowered himself with sincere eyes. He said he promised to talk to her yesterday, just to end things and avoid future trouble. In the end, I chose to believe Michael's words. In matters of the heart, he carried a natural sense of superiority. When I first met him, his romantic history was laid out openly, almost inviting others to join in. So I guessed he wouldn't stoop to lying. After his explanation, I disdainfully realized that deep down, I was somewhat relieved. The wedding was set for a month later, and my mother was lying in a hospital bed, holding on to see me happy. Apart from that, with 3 years of a relationship, I didn't want to declare it dead without trying to save it. Michael took a step back and once again instructed me on how to use the medication before heading to the study. I urged him to leave, but he looked at me with red eyes. He said he wouldn't leave, wouldn't pester, just afraid I'd hide away and cry alone. He wanted me to release all this resentment and grievance, then it was up to me what to do next. When he said these words, the pain in his eyes didn't seem fake. Shamefully, I admitted that a Michael like this made me unable to resist. In the following days, I was plagued by nightmares. Images of Michael saving me and betraying me repeatedly haunted me in my dreams, pulling and dragging me until they finally dragged me into the abyss. The abyss felt suffocating, much like that MRI machine, sealed shut. Every time I woke up, Michael was there, his face filled with deep pain. With red eyes, he apologized. And then I grabbed his hand and hit him. Waking up again in the middle of the night, seeing him haggardly by the bedside, I chose to compromise. Yet, the nightmares didn't end. When we finally embraced and reconciled, I once again saw Lena. In the hospital where my mother was staying. Lena was dressed in a white angelic outfit, confidently reprimanding a group of doctors. It seemed like she was in a leadership position, quite high up. But I remembered, in this hospital, Michael was supposed to be the biggest shareholder. Chapter 5. A huge chill ran down my spine, and I grabbed my mother's attending physician and asked, "Who hired this Dr. Lena?" The doctor looked puzzled. Michael's assistant personally brought her in. I thought with this treatment, she should be your family doctor, right? I didn't catch what he said afterwards. Because Lena dismissed everyone and was now gazing at me from afar. She smiled and walked towards me. In an instant, all the blood rushed to my head, and that suffocating feeling from the MRI machine struck me hard. She covered her mouth and nose. Meeting again. Your clothes, I wanted to wash them, but Michael said they were too dirty, so he threw them away. I glared at her. You're not afraid of having a professional stain on your record. She smirked. In Michael's hospital, do you think a stain matters? I lost my temper and raised my hand to slap her. But before the slap landed, my wrist was tightly grabbed. I turned around to see Michael's angry face. He didn't look at me but at Lena. Who let you come up? He said. Wasn't it clear you should stay downstairs and not come to the top floor? Lena's eyes immediately reddened. I just heard Gwen's mother lives on the top floor, I came to take a look. What, just because she's here I can't show up? Before she could finish, Michael suddenly roared. I told you to go downstairs. Lena was startled by the sudden outburst, an incredulous look on her face. She took a few steps back, clutching her chest. Michael then turned around, visibly flustered. He wanted me to listen to his explanation, but I forcefully pushed him away. Seemingly concerned about my waist, he stumbled as I pushed him. The food container in his hand fell to the ground, hot soup splashing all over his ankle. I knew it was the soup he had made for my mother. He took over the task of delivering soup to my mother, saying it was to let me rest my back, but now it seems it was to prevent me from encountering Lena. When Lena saw Michael scalded, she rushed over like a mad woman and pushed me aside. She dramatically knelt on the ground, trembling hands lifting Michael's pant leg. Upon seeing Michael's reddened skin, she suddenly collapsed. She shouted and beat him. "Michael, can't I admit defeat? ing admit defeat, is that not enough for you? You win, Michael, I admit I would be jealous if you found someone else. I admit, you make me so angry, risking your life to fight for her, it hurts me. I admit to everything, isn't that enough? But what choice did I have at that time? I had to leave, Michael. By acting like this, fighting recklessly, finding women at random, do you think I'm okay with it?" Lena's words struck me like thunder. Something kept buzzing in my head, and everything around me seemed blurry, like veiled in black gauze. I only remember many people surrounding us. Michael seemed like he wanted to come towards me, but Lena held him back. She said she admitted defeat, she left everything behind abroad and came back. She asked Michael how long he would stay mad at her. Suddenly, a sharp pain twisted in my abdomen, along with my chest, causing me to suffocate, making me want to vomit. In my hazy mind, there was only one thought. I can't let my mother know, she wouldn't be able to handle it. Such a despicable and disgusting matter, happening to her daughter, she wouldn't be able to handle it. My mother's ward was at the other end of the corridor, very far from here. As long as no one told her. I grabbed the wrist of the doctor beside me. I begged him not to tell my mother, not to let her know. Absolutely, positively, don't let her know. I couldn't even see clearly if I was holding Dr. Zhang or Dr. Li, the corridor was filled with so many people. I gasped for air desperately. My mother wouldn't live for many more days, she wouldn't see me happy, and she shouldn't see my unhappiness either. The voices around me started to fade. I heard Michael calling for me, asking me to listen to his explanation. But he was being held back, unable to break free. I chuckled bitterly to myself, knowing I no longer needed to listen to any explanations. I looked at Michael with a determined gaze. I didn't have the strength to scold, nor the energy to question. Just one threat from the depths of my heart. I said, "Don't let my mother know, or I'll break her bad leg." Tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. I mustered all the strength I had and ran away in despair. Michael called out to me from behind, his voice hoarse. With his shout, Lena collapsed. She screamed that her leg hurt. Michael did not come after her. Chapter 6. What is more unbearable than sudden death is a slow and painful death. There is no innocent person who forgives scumbags. However, the ones who are tortured the most during this slow process are those who cannot understand why. They grieve deeply while reminiscing about the past. No matter how hard they try to understand why. In my head, like a movie, the scene of Michael saving me at that time kept replaying. The details from that time were magnified. His emotions were indeed not good at that time, his reckless way of fighting seemed like a way of venting. Despite his wounds bleeding, he didn't care at all. When I approached, his indifferent smile probably carried a playful mockery. Enduring the feeling of suffocation from pain, I contacted a new hospital for my mother. Then I called Thomas. I wanted them to pay the price. Thomas smiled and asked me why I thought he would take on such a difficult case. His opponent was Michael, a wealthy and well-connected person. I didn't beat around the bush. I said, "Don't think I don't know you're acquainted with Penny, you're trying to go for younger women." Penny was aloof by nature, and as one of her few friends, I vaguely knew of Thomas's existence. She wouldn't bend over backwards for material gains. Thomas chuckled. "You seem to know quite a lot, but do you know that you might be pregnant yourself?" I froze on the spot, all the indescribable bitterness rushing to my eyes. Michael and I did consider having a child, but due to my irregular menstrual cycles, I was currently taking Chinese medicine to regulate. A timely pain shot through my lower abdomen. I quickly opened the photo Thomas sent. It was the result of an MRI. This one was completely different from the one Michael had obtained. Not only could you see the lumbar spine, but it also captured the lower abdomen perfectly. There, a little life had already been conceived. Thomas said this was found in the abandoned records from Lena's previous workplace. Meaning, Lena discovered my pregnancy during the first examination and then destroyed the results. I had another scan to avoid the lower abdomen. After that, she locked me in the machine and went to see my boyfriend. The speculation was confirmed, Lena did it on purpose after all. I started to worry about my mother who was staying in the hospital. After discussing a few words with Thomas, I gathered my spirits and returned to the hospital once again. Chapter 7. Michael and Lena's figures were no longer seen in the corridor. The medical staff, upon seeing me, intentionally avoided eye contact. Near the VIP ward where my mother was, I saw Michael's assistant. I guessed Michael must be there accompanying Lena for her leg treatment. After composing myself with great difficulty, I entered my mother's room. I fed her some soup, which she struggled to swallow. I said, "Mom, I've changed hospitals for you, let's try a different treatment." My mother seemed more spirited than before. She pushed away the spoon and slowly held my hand. Pulling me closer, she then tremulously hugged my head to her chest. "Gwen," she said. "It's okay to cry when you're in pain." My mother found out after all. At that moment, the defense I had held up all afternoon collapsed. All the grievances, all the frustrations rushed out at that moment. I hugged my mother and cried uncontrollably. I said, "I'm sorry for making you worry again." Surprisingly, my mother remained calm, gently stroking my hair. She said, "Silly child, no one's life is smooth sailing, everyone faces challenges. If I see you become strong, then I won't worry." Although my mother's words seemed gentle, they made me feel extremely embarrassed. After being blocked by others for so long, I even forgot that I also held a knife in my hand. Before meeting Michael, I was a dancer struggling in a tight spot. Slander, malicious competition, and even vile unwritten rules, I fought against them all with sheer strength. Now, I found myself disarmed in the land of tenderness. I wiped away my tears and discussed moving my mother to a cleaner hospital. However, my mother shook her head. She said she couldn't bear being tossed around anymore, she just wanted to see me protect myself. At that time, I hadn't fully understood the depth of her words. Chapter 8. As I left the hospital, Michael's assistant caught up with me. He said Michael would come to explain things once he finished his current tasks. I ignored him and walked away. Other than Lena's injured leg, the only thing he needed to handle was probably Lena's lawsuit. What else needed explaining? He had already taken a stand against me through his actions. Thomas said that Michael used means to obstruct me from suing Lena. The hospital's video footage was deleted and cannot be recovered. The hospital's leadership was bribed, and their statements were consistent. All we had on hand was the video data recorded by Thomas afterwards, along with the torn examination results. Putting it online would only cause a small stir, and convicting them would be difficult. If Michael was willing to spend money, there might not even be a small stir. Someone as loyal as Michael, how could he be unwilling to spend money? Even when dealing with someone like me, a mere tool, he was very generous, let alone his unforgettable first love. The chances of winning the lawsuit were slim. But I told Thomas not to present the examination results for now, to focus on everything else, and to make sure Michael paid the highest price to protect Lena. What I wanted was never the disaster of imprisonment in those youthful years. To kill someone's heart, I only wanted to kill Michael's heart. Chapter 9. In the following days, as we expected, it was almost impossible to sue Lena for this minor negligence. Even amidst dealing with the lawsuit, Michael had the time to come back and find me. In my impression, he lowered his stance for the first time. Before, whether pursuing me or coaxing me, he always did so effortlessly. Fighting for you without demanding, apologizing to you without being humble. But this time, I rarely saw a plea in his eyes. He begged me not to pursue Lena's responsibility any further. He admitted that there was an element of stubbornness in his pursuit of me, but he felt that I should understand he had developed genuine feelings for me. He said that as long as I didn't pursue Lena this time, let him compensate Lena once, he would definitely give me a satisfactory answer afterwards. His stubble was blue, eyes tired. Gwen, I never thought she would come back. I admit my heart is in chaos. But I know clearly, no matter how it started, those feelings between us are not fake. When you held my face and said you loved me, I could hear my heartbeat quicken. So, Gwen, I want to marry you. I want to give you the happiest life. I think I have finally moved on from that relationship. But Gwen, even so, Lena is still someone I loved. She broke her leg to help my father get treatment. No matter what, I cannot watch you destroy her. I knew Michael had always been righteous, but I never imagined his righteousness would be so absurd. He said he knew he had wronged me, and he would find a way to make it up to me in the future. But why did he think I would obediently stay in place waiting for his compensation? In front of him, I informed family and friends that the wedding was cancelled. To show my determination, he notified the hotel that the wedding would proceed as planned. I slapped him twice with all my might, then locked him out. In the following days, Michael delivered medicine and food to me on time while also contacting various parties to help Lena in the lawsuit. Thanks to his efforts, even the videos posted by Thomas on major platforms were intercepted and taken down. Every ripple I stirred up was extinguished by his own hands. After doing all this, he ran to my building late at night, saying he was afraid I might feel uncomfortable and wanted to catch a glimpse of me. He stubbornly interpreted this rift as inevitable friction between lovers. I coldly watched him self-proclaiming deep emotions and self-pity, couldn't help but laugh, and then closed the curtains with a firm hand. Soon, the day of the trial arrived. The night before, Michael sent a voice message as usual. He said, "Gwen, fulfill me this time, repay the debt, and I will come back and let you handle me as you wish." I said, "Whether or not you can repay the debt remains to be seen. You have to try your best." My ambiguous words made him think we had used some extraordinary means. So, he really did his best and used despicable means to clear all possible obstacles. In the end, the result was as he wished. With insufficient evidence from Thomas, we lost the lawsuit. Michael won the case too easily, as if using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. In court, apart from explaining the dangers and suffocation of the MRI machine, the humiliation and grievance of urinary incontinence, we had no other evidence. When faced with the demand to prove that Lena acted with subjective intent, we were flustered and had nothing. Looking beyond the crowd to meet Michael's eyes, he couldn't bear to look at me directly, appearing restless and uneasy. In his mind, I had finally become a weak person worthy of pity. Finally, when the trial ended and faced with my desolate figure, Michael rushed towards me. He grabbed me and said, "Gwen, everything is over. I'm here for you to handle as you wish. You can hit me, scold me, just don't ignore me." I brushed off his hand and walked away, listening to him being surrounded by reporters behind him. The reporters were arranged by Thomas in advance. Recent medical disputes have been very serious, with high intensity. Michael's lawsuit happened to be speaking up for doctors, so Thomas arranged this big show. "Michael, you won this lawsuit beautifully," finally giving a sigh of relief to medical staff. Yes, if medical disputes always end in favor of the doctors, they won't be able to save and treat patients in peace in the future. "Michael, I heard the person involved in the medical dispute was your girlfriend." "Michael, you're truly a great person who cares for doctors. If you hadn't sacrificed your personal feelings and stopped your girlfriend from causing trouble, it would have truly chilled the hearts of the doctors." At such a tense moment in doctor-patient relationships, this gesture by Michael can be said to have upheld the harmony between doctors and patients. Apart from reporters, there was also a group of people dressed in white, holding banners congratulating Michael on his victory. The theme was all about Michael sacrificing personal relationships to prevent medical disputes, which deeply resonated with everyone. These people bestowed a great title upon Michael, a hero in maintaining harmony between doctors and patients. Thomas did a great job with his tactics. It is said that Michael's face was very ugly at that time, but he was hindered by the camera in front of him and couldn't explode. He walked away quickly while talking to me on the phone. However, in front of everyone, Lena grabbed him and insisted that he must attend the celebration banquet no matter what. The guests at the banquet were all heavyweight figures who had been smoothed over. Michael had no choice but to go. So, as he raised his glass in celebration, I lay on the cold operating table. Chapter 10. The child could not be saved, I knew it long ago. When Thomas told me about the pregnancy, I immediately went for a checkup. I couldn't bring myself to abort the child, but unfortunately, after the night in the MRI machine, coupled with the stimulus of betrayal, the fetus had stopped developing. The only thing I regretted about him was choosing to abort him at this time, using him. The only thing colder than the machine was the numb heart. Michael's words seemed to echo in my ears. He said, "Gwen, I want a girl, soft and cute like you, even when scolding someone." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down. That night, with Thomas's push, major platforms started pushing out interviews of Michael. Riding the trend of medical disputes, keywords like sacrificing personal relationships for the greater good and maintaining harmony between doctors and patients trended. What was originally unremarkable suddenly became interesting because of Michael's exceptional appearance. This time, when Michael couldn't remove the trending topic no matter how much money he spent, he began to sense that something was amiss. Thomas used his connections, and several stars I had once coached in dance started reposting. In no time, Michael became the talk of the town. At the same time, Thomas finally received news about his investigation into Lena. The moment for our counterattack had arrived. Different voices emerged online. People asked, who was Michael sacrificing personal relationships for? Then, naturally, my identity was exposed. Photos of me and Michael on intimate trips, photos of Michael carrying me on his back while climbing mountains. There were even photos of me and Michael visiting a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner while preparing for pregnancy. Comment sections started to stir. Could it be that he's sacrificing personal relationships with his fiancée? Or his pregnant fiancée? Is this a love triangle? I can already imagine a drama where a scumbag allows his pregnant wife to be locked in an MRI machine by his first love. The gossip ignited the public's curiosity. Soon, photos of me walking sadly towards the gynecology operating room surfaced online, causing an uproar. Wow, this guy is such an idiot. He's sacrificing his pregnant fiancée and her unborn child in the name of righteousness. He's really setting a high standard, sacrificing himself for medical harmony. The hospital should make a statue of him at the entrance. The heat level rose once again. Michael's phone rang hurriedly. "Gwen, where are you?" His voice trembled. I didn't have the strength to deal with him, nor did I want my emotions to affect my recovery. I told him to watch a big show and asked him to stay tuned. Then I hung up the phone. Chapter 11. Later, Michael called Thomas. Thomas tactfully showed him the shattered MRI results and uploaded them to online platforms. The hot search changed from sacrificing personal relationships to a female doctor plotting murder and medical incident reversal. At that time, the celebration banquet hadn't ended yet. People were still toasting to the hero, who maintained harmony between doctors and patients. Faced with various connections that were paid for dearly, the hero seemed unable to smash his glass. He swallowed the most pathetic gulp of wine in his life. Bitterness filled his throat, toasting to his own foolishness. After finishing the drink, Michael claimed an urgent matter and left the table. He rushed to the gynecology department to find me like a madman. By then, I had already left the operating table and was resting on the hospital bed. As Michael burst in, he grabbed a doctor, demanding why they had removed his child. Even as nurses pulled him away, he was still emotional. I coldly chuckled and handed him the test results. The child was already dead in the womb due to stress. If we talk about the culprit, you should take some blame too. Michael held the paper, hands shaking violently. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I smiled bitterly. If I had told you earlier that your child was locked in the MRI machine, would you still have helped Lena? If it was me locked in there, it wouldn't matter, but once it's your child, then it's not okay? Didn't Lena injure her leg for you? With your saintly qualities, you should repay even the smallest kindness, sacrificing a child. What's wrong with that? Michael buried his head in pain, shoulders shaking. The doctor who had been pulled over glanced over in surprise, and said, "Hey, you say you're the child's father? But why do you look a bit like that hero who helped doctors in the lawsuit?" The word hero hit Michael like a ton of bricks at the right moment. He raised his head in guilt, his eyes red as he looked at me. "Gwen, I really didn't know it would turn out like this." He who is self-righteous, how could he possibly know? Lena said she forgets everything when she sees him, so he arrogantly believed in his own charm. Considering himself a sage and a savior, he thought there was nothing beyond his control. By some stroke of luck, I was given the chance to deliver a blow to him. "You still have a lot you don't know." I mocked him, looking at him with disdain. "I'll reveal it all to you soon." Chapter 12. To ensure I could rest properly, Thomas took Michael away. Shortly after, the shredded report gained immense traction online. After receiving numerous endorsements and reposts from verified users, various doctors spoke up, rejecting Michael's despicable actions under the guise of maintaining harmony between doctors and patients. They refused to let unscrupulous doctors tarnish the image of the medical profession. Subsequently, Michael and Lena's past relationship was exposed. It was said that Lena, an intern at a hospital under Michael's family, was not highly regarded due to her lack of background, average education, and mediocre professional skills. Presented with an image of being mistreated, she gained Michael's sympathy. Grateful for the kindness, she devotedly cared for Michael's father during his hospitalization, even breaking her leg in a rescue attempt due to haste. Their relationship quickly intensified as a result, and during Michael's father's heart surgery, Lena was specially brought in to assist and learn in the operating room. Then, an accident occurred during that surgery, resulting in Michael's father's death. Lena automatically took all the blame upon herself, feeling so guilty that she resigned from her job and left the country alone. Michael believed that since Lena wasn't the lead surgeon, she, as an assistant, shouldn't be held responsible. Despite his efforts to persuade her, Lena remained resolute. With their past exposed, most people had finished their popcorn and understood the whole story. Thomas then played his trump card. He made the investigation results of the medical incident involving Michael's father public. Not only was Michael caught off guard, even the vast network of highly imaginative netizens did not see it coming. Michael's father actually died at the hands of Lena. Taking advantage of her status as a prospective daughter-in-law, Lena entered the operating room without much explanation. She pushed others aside, positioning herself as the assistant surgeon. Making several mistakes while passing tools, her lack of skill was evident. However, her boldness in swiftly correcting errors when they occurred directly led to the complete failure of the surgery. No one dared to speak the truth. Attributing the surgical failure to the patient's own condition was the best explanation. Afterward, the senior doctor resigned in guilt, and Lena left the country. 3 years passed before she felt it was finally safe to return. With all the details out in the open, the trending searches exploded. The ultimate idiot surged to the top of the trending list. "Guys, I've seen the funniest joke in 10 years. She killed his father and son, yet he helped her win the lawsuit. Oh my, while he was celebrating with a toast, his child was being buried. What kind of ultimate idiot is this? It takes a 10-year coma to pull off something like this. Damn, he must seek death to appease the spirits of his father and son in heaven." For an hour, Michael's photos were circulated wildly, turned into various memes. A picture of Michael with a halo above his head, captioned, "It's okay, I forgive you. I only lost my father and child, but she once injured her leg for me." Maliciousness and insults poured in endlessly. Someone joked about hanging a huge photo of hero defender priest at the entrance of a store tomorrow to ride the trend. As long as they spit on him 3 times, products will be 20% off. The comments section was bustling with excitement, everyone saying they would go check it out. Oh, isn't that the hero from a few days ago? Yes, that idiot. Yuck. The humiliation and frustration I endured, Michael now bore it tenfold. This disgust and frustration were not comparable to trivial matters like eating flies or feces. It was a piercing pain and regret that gnawed at the heart. An insult that could drive a person crazy. That night, he acted like a maniac wanting to confront Lena, but Thomas stopped him. Thomas said, "Don't get too deep in love's illusion. Now's not the time to prepare for a lawsuit or get entangled in petty love-hate relationships." Thomas said Michael self-flagellated, bruising himself with a hammer, leaving himself covered in scars. However, the gratification of revenge did not bring me any relief. My child was gone. And though Michael was rotten to the core, he had once firmly taken root in my heart. To be forcibly torn apart, how could it not hurt? Chapter 13. Taking advantage of the continued online buzz, Thomas began preparing for a second lawsuit. He obtained the hospital video that Michael had deleted. This time, he wouldn't hold back. Under the pressure of public opinion, the case progressed relatively smoothly. However, Lena firmly maintained that she was unaware of my pregnancy, claiming she had cut up the first test results because they were unclear and had taken a new one. Thomas reassured me that even if we didn't win the case, with Michael's righteous temperament, Lena wouldn't get away unscathed. Yet, what I didn't expect was Lena turning the tables on me. She sought me out once again, but this time, she had lost her former composure. She knelt down, apologizing to me. For the MRI machine incident, she claimed she truly didn't know. I coldly pushed her away and walked off. That night, she found my mother. She first begged for forgiveness, then resorted to threats, saying I would never win. Not long after she left, the hospital announced my mother's death. When I arrived at the hospital, my mother lay peacefully there. The hand that had caressed my hair just yesterday now lay motionless across her chest. As the white cloth fell, I completely collapsed. I even thought, if I couldn't bring her down, I would confront her. I rushed out like a maniac, but Thomas held me back. He slowly opened his hand, revealing a few strands of fuzz from a sweater. "Found in Auntie's hand," he said. When I recognized that it was fuzz from Lena's sweater, tears burst forth instantly. Thomas remained silent. He said it was the last gift my mother left for me. Chapter 14. My mother said she only had a few days left, regretting that she couldn't help me. So she chose such a decisive way to leave. The fuzz in her hand cast a significant suspicion on Lena. After she left, my mother removed the oxygen mask and left resolutely. I looked at my mother covered by the white cloth, unable to speak through my tears. My confusion prevented her from having a peaceful end. And at this moment, the main culprit of all this, Michael, stood at the door holding a thermos. He stood there in a panic and sorrow, unable to speak a word. I rushed over and pushed him hard. He staggered back a few steps, then stood still, and finally knelt down. 3 loud sounds, a few resounding slaps. And a few tears that fell involuntarily. The past vividly in mind. "Mom, take a few more bites, wait until we get married, you have to spoil your grandson. Aren't you ashamed? You're not married, and you call my mom a mom? Why should I be ashamed? Mom is so good to me, even if I don't marry you, I'll call her mom." Michael knelt silently, unable to say the words of apology. At this moment, he realized clearly that we were beyond redemption. And he didn't kneel to beg for forgiveness, but for the guilt and regret in his heart. Towards me, towards my mother, and towards the unborn child. In the following days, I never saw Michael again. The public opinion continued. Everyone said Lena killed my mother. Under the significant public pressure, coupled with Thomas's persuasive skills, Lena confessed. She angrily accused everyone of slandering her, saying she didn't kill anyone, she just found me annoying and shut me out for a while. She said I only lost a child, why should it ruin her whole life? Why should something long settled be brought up again to punish her? Thomas recorded the evidence, and Lena completely lost her sanity. Before the police arrived, she broke free and got into a car. The car started and drove straight towards me. I couldn't dodge in time and was knocked aside by a figure. Accompanied by the screeching of brakes, Michael fell to the ground in agony. one leg firmly pinned under the wheel. Chapter 15. Lena was sentenced. Multiple charges, 10 years. Michael was left disabled, one leg amputated high up, fitted with a prosthetic. And me, I paid a hefty lawyer's fee. Thomas deserved it, graciously accepted it, and then told me to fulfill my promise to do volunteer work at his law firm every month. I nodded with a smile. I knew Penny arranged this, knowing that as long as I owed someone, I would pull myself together and find a purpose in life. Penny was right, life goes on, after the darkness, the sun will always shine again. Main text complete.
Michael's extra. I decided to get married to the girl I stubbornly pursued. I admit, initially my intentions were impure, all because Lena passed by her dance studio and said, "What's good about practicing dance? You're like a bean sprout." So after Lena left, I went after the bean sprout she mentioned. At first, it was to spite Lena, but after helping her deal with a few bullies, when she trembled and kissed me, I suddenly felt a pang in my heart. This innocent girl, I shouldn't deceive her. Her lips were as soft as her waist, and I felt like I was drowning in her tenderness. I was unwilling to admit that my proud feelings for Lena could be so easily tested. So, I consciously restrained myself. Even so, in the presence of Gwen, who was so wonderful, I surrendered. I fell in love with her. When I realized I couldn't bear to see her shed a tear, I decided to propose to her. The wedding was scheduled a month later, but Lena returned. She stopped me in the hospital corridor, and my mind went blank. Memories flooded back, and I got heavily drunk that night. Lena was crying too, absent-mindedly rubbing her bad leg. She said, "I thought you were waiting for me all this time." That sentence made me feel like a heartless man, and I decided to make it up to her. What I didn't expect was that Lena was the doctor in the MRI room, and even more surprising, Gwen was locked inside for a whole night. How could I not feel sorry for her? She was scared of confined spaces, she would cry. But when Lena asked me if she should hit her, I was stunned. How could I hit her? Our past feelings cannot be faked. I would never resort to violence against her. I thought Gwen would understand me and do me a favor, but she was relentless. I know she was wronged, but I will make it up to her doubly. She disagreed and insisted on forcing Lena to resign. I had no choice but to temporarily arrange Lena to work at my hospital. I instructed her not to go to the top floor, knowing it would upset Gwen. But she still went. Not only did she go, she collapsed and revealed the truth about my pursuit of Gwen. When Gwen ran away in despair, I was truly at a loss. I pushed Lena away, but accidentally touched her injured leg. I had to take responsibility. I thought the 3 years of relationship between Gwen and me would eventually be explained. However, I never dreamt that things would spiral out of my control. I helped Lena win the lawsuit. I told Gwen that once this favor was repaid, we would have no further ties. From then on, I left it to her to decide. On the day we won the lawsuit, many journalists came, praising me for sacrificing personal relationships and being a hero in maintaining doctor-patient relationships. The phrase sacrificing personal relationships suddenly made me realize how cruel I had been to Gwen. I repaid a favor but made her suffer. She might have cried and hidden away countless times. Fortunately, the favor was repaid, and it was time for me to go back to her. She could hit me, scold me, anything. But she didn't give me that chance again. As I raised my glass and reluctantly celebrated with those people, I saw a message online. Someone posted a photo of Gwen having a miscarriage in the gynecology department. At that moment, my heart sank. The unprecedented panic made it almost impossible for me to maintain a smile on my face. "Our righteous hero, cheers!" they all said. I raised my glass in a daze, the bitter drink going down my throat like swallowing poison. I left in a sorry state, almost frantic to find Gwen. But she said the show wasn't over yet. When I heard from the doctor that my child likely stopped developing due to stimulation inside the MRI machine, I slumped to the ground. The doctor said, "You seem like that hero." The word hero felt like a knife in my heart. I, the person who indirectly caused the death of my child, got away with it. No, I can be considered responsible for my child's death too. If I hadn't left with Lena, forgotten about Gwen there, none of this would have happened. Later, I saw intentional evidence from Lena through Thomas. I'm completely falling apart. A wave of panic like never before hit me. My Gwen might really not want me anymore. People online started cursing me, calling me a world-class idiot. I slapped myself hard. Yes, I am. This idiot just took pride in killing his own child, standing in the spotlight, and accepting everyone's toasts. I've become a joke to the whole world. Those insults are pouring in. But they're right in their insults. I don't care, I just want to see my Gwen. I want to know if she's in pain after the surgery. I want to see if she's hiding and crying. But fate won't forgive me. My father's medical accident is brought up again, and unbelievably, the culprit is Lena. How can I describe that moment? I'm just a joke. I strongly feel that my existence is a joke. I feel sick to my stomach. I despise myself so much I wish I could die. I curl up, all I can see in my mind is the reporters calling me a hero. I'm in agony. I grit my teeth and shamelessly find Thomas. I want to kill Lena. But even with all my efforts, it's not easy to bring Lena down. And then, I hear the devastating news. Gwen's mother passed away. The old lady left Gwen a chance with her life. But at the same time, it completely shattered any chance of reconciliation between Gwen and me. The whole truth is revealed, but I feel like I have nothing left to care about. So when Lena went mad, I rushed over without hesitation and pushed Gwen away. When her leg was trapped under the wheel, I suddenly felt a sense of relief. I looked up at Gwen, she was crying. Trembling hands, she called for an ambulance, her eyes showing pity, but she never took another step towards me. She really doesn't want me anymore. The girl who would shed tears at the sight of a drop of my blood decisively turned away, never looking at me again. I cut off a leg. When I was being examined inside the MRI machine, I suddenly burst into tears. The doctor said I didn't cry when my leg was cut off. Why am I crying now? I cried like a pathetic mess. Inside the MRI machine, it felt suffocating, stifling. That girl stayed up all night in there. Someone who loves cleanliness so much, wet herself and peed her pants. What have I done to her? I selfishly satisfied my own desires, causing her great distress. When I was discharged and returned home, Gwen had already moved out all her belongings. Looking at the half-empty house, I fell flat on the ground. When I woke up again, I didn't know what day it was. But I remember, it seems like I had just finished selecting the wedding ring with Gwen. We were preparing for a baby. She wasn't at home, probably at the hospital visiting her mother. So I got up to go to the hospital to find her. I noticed my pant leg was empty, like a prosthetic limb inside. But that didn't matter, I suddenly missed my Gwen so much, I just wanted to see her quickly and tell her I missed her. There was no one in the hospital, even her mother's hospital room was empty. I asked around, and the nurse said she had passed away many days ago. I started running outside. Running into the bustling crowd on the street, painful memories surged up, and I abruptly woke up. Gwen didn't want me. This intermittent state of amnesia lasted for a long time. Every day waking up from dreams, my memories would return to the day I was with Gwen. Then eagerly looking for someone. Then abruptly waking up. Day after day. I didn't want treatment, even though I was in excruciating pain when awake. I was still immersed in that moment of forgetfulness every day. Until one day, I went to Thomas's law firm excitedly, asking him to notarize our prenuptial agreement. I wanted to share all my assets with Gwen. Thomas helplessly turned around and said to the person behind him, "Can you make sure he doesn't come to bother me with work again?" Behind him, a familiar face appeared. Gwen handed me an invitation card, saying, "Let it go, I'm getting married next month." In that moment, I was completely sober. Lost love forever.